Luigi Mangione in court. Eric Shawn has an answer from the judge because there's movement on this case. The defense is trying to put it all on the cops. Eric Shawn has more with what just happened. Eric, hello.
Yeah, Bill, hello. A victory in part for Luigi Mangione. Judge Gregory Caro ruling just a few moments ago, issuing his written ruling that some of the items that police found in Mangione's backpack will be suppressed. In other words, the jury, when the state trial starts, expected in September, will not learn about some of those items that apparently does not, though, include the gun. Here's how it went down. The police got a phone call. They believe that the suspect in the shooting of Brian Thompson was sitting in McDonald's. They show up at the McDonald's in Altoona, Pennsylvania, start talking to him. He has his backpack, and one officer moves it with his foot away from him. Another officer then places the backpack 9 feet away on a table. That's when Altoona police officer Christy Wasser starts rummaging through it. She at one point said she thought there could be a bomb. And that's when Mangione was then talked to and placed into handcuffs. Well, Judge Caro says that search was illegal. He apparently, in his ruling, says that was not proper because there wasn't a search warrant at that time. So he has ruled that the items found in the backpack at the McDonald's will not be included in the trial, and those include the bullet magazine, a magazine full of bullets that Officer Wasser found, as well as a journal, a cell phone, a passport, a chip. So it's the bullet magazine, his cell phone, his passport, his wallet, and a computer chip will not be allowed into evidence. What then happened was Wasser turned off the body camera, drove 11 minutes to the police station, and that's when Mangione was processed. And as part of that inventory, Officer Wasser found the gun, a handmade 9mm weapon. Apparently, under this ruling, that will be allowed to be in the trial. That the gun, the weapon that police say was used to kill Brian Thompson, the United Healthcare CEO, will be allowed into evidence. But what is not being allowed is, as I've said, the magazine full of bullets, as well as some of the other items that Mangione had. It was a fascinating suppression hearing that went on for about 2 weeks here, as the defense has gone through every point with like a toothpick. Challenging every single step that police officers made, arguing that when they were talking to Mangione at the McDonald's, that it was illegal. They did not have a search warrant. Under the law, they pointed out that if you can grab something, police have the right to go through it, so that they don't want you to lunge in something and grab a gun or something. But if it is not in your control, then they don't have a right to go through it unless they have a search warrant. And Judge Caro ruled that because the backpack was moved 9 feet away from Mangione, it was placed on a table. That meant that the backpack was not effectively in Mangione's control. So because he did not have control over the backpack, it was illegal at that point for police to go through his backpack and search it without a search warrant, in which Christy Wasser, the police officer, found the bullet magazine and then rummaged through it for other items. Only later at the police station, when they were taking the inventory, did they find the weapon, the 9mm that police say was used to kill Brian Thompson. So we'll see how this all goes down. This is in complete contrast to what the federal judge ruled. The federal judge allowed everything in. This is kind of a half victory, but somewhat of a victory nonetheless for Luigi Mangione, except, of course, for the key item of evidence, and that would seem to be the weapon.
Okay, just for our viewers who aren't following every step and every move, we're a year and a half into this, right? It was December of 2024. There's concurrent trials, right, Eric, at the state level, the federal level? Well,
yeah.
Where are those both
now,
and are they at the same point, yes or no?
Yeah, there are two different legal proceedings against Luigi Mangione. Here is New York State Supreme Court. Judge Gregory Caro is the judge here. This decision, throwing out the bullet magazines and the like, only affects the state trial. The state trial, jury selection, is supposed to start in September here at the state trial. 2 blocks away is the federal court. That is where there are federal charges against Luigi Mangione. The death penalty was thrown out in that case that was sought because the defense was able to argue for terrorism charge, you need murder and another violent crime. The federal authorities, DOJ, said that was stalking. The judge in that case threw the stalking out, saying stalking may not necessarily be violent. So in that case, Mangione does not face the death penalty. That trial will commence after this trial is over. This trial starts with jury selection at September. So we'll have the state trial first, then the federal trial. But certainly the defense lawyers for Mangione can claim somewhat of a victory in that. But of course, it appears that the main issue, the weapon that authorities say was used, will be allowed in this case in the state trial.
We are hearing from inside the courtroom. The judge and Mangione are in the courtroom now. So, Eric, thank you. Stand by. Dana's got more.
And Jonathan Turley, a constitutional law professor, joins us. And there's seems to be, I mean, this is all breaking news, so it's not fog of war per se, but as our great lawyers read through the decision, is it a mix of a decision here, Jonathan?
It is a mix, Dana. This is what we had talked about earlier when I mentioned the inventory exception, is that is the exception under which the gun was ultimately allowed to be admitted. But then the judge said that the rest of this material would not be admitted because there was a lack of a warrant. Now, you know, it does appear that it's easier to get cameras in a New York courtroom than it is to admit evidence. But in this case, it's a split decision. So he is going to face the weapon that matches with this alleged murder. And that is usually the most important piece of evidence the prosecutors can have. But the judge just kept out his journal, where his own words could have been used to establish his motivation and his rather twisted view of the healthcare industry. Now, that's, of course, very different from the federal trial where everything came in, and people are no doubt confused by that. But we have two different jurisdictions. New York tends to be a very favorable jurisdiction for criminal defense attorneys. And you're seeing that contrast now between two courthouses that are just blocks apart.
Okay, Jonathan, what's in? The gun is in, and let's be clear about this. What else, in terms of evidence, will the prosecution use?
Well, they have the videotape itself of the killing. Now, you cannot make out clearly the face of the shooter, but obviously you have the clothing and other issues that match Mangione. But the other material that the prosecutors really wanted will not come in. So you don't get the silencer. You don't get the magazine. Most importantly, you do not get the journal. Those things would be kept out. Now, keep in mind, that could be re-examined for the purposes of impeachment, rebuttal. Things can happen at trial where the court can be asked to reconsider it. But at this point, what they've got is the gun. And they've got a gun that matches the videotape and a videotape that seems to match the defendant. That's still a very strong case. You know, the best that the defense can hope in a case like this is a type of jury nullification, that they enable jurors who might be inclined to help this defendant out to ignore evidence. Now, what they just got is a benefit in that they will have to ignore less evidence, but they still have to ignore the gun, the videotape, which are pretty powerful pieces of evidence.
Professor, can I ask you something? It might be a dumb question, but the defense—
No dumb questions.
Is the defense arguing that he wasn't there? Like, have they provided an alibi, like he's supposed to be somewhere else?
Well, you know, they haven't yet suggested an evil twin defense, but it comes almost to that because the person on that videotape bears striking resemblance to their client, and they also now have their client in possession with the gun that killed this healthcare executive. So that's why this is becoming more of a jury nullification argument, that someone on the juror may be enamored with him, the way that so many apparently are in New York City. But yeah, they're going to argue that you can't prove that he was there. Now, it's very unlikely that they will put him on the stand. In a case like this, the defense tends not to put defendants on the stand, particularly when you've got successful motions of suppression, because you don't want to trip a wire that could get the court to reconsider the admission of some evidence, particularly that journal.
Can I ask one other thing then? Because he does have, we know, and it's disturbing, he has this fan base and this hysteria surrounding him. But the reason he has a fan base is because they want him freed because they think he was justified. It's not that they think he was innocent. Do I have that right?
That's absolutely right, Dana. And with, jury nullification arguments are not allowed in courtrooms as a general matter. You can't come out and say, just ignore the evidence. What you try to do when defense attorneys do this is they try to sort of just play to the jury, hoping that they will just simply ignore some of the evidence. And in this case, they will have to ignore less of that. But you're absolutely right. The people that are enamored with this individual believe that he was justified. And that's the one argument they cannot make in a courtroom. The judge would be on them like ugly on moose the minute they make that type of argument.
Yeah, so our producer in the courtroom, Maria Peronich, summarizes it this way, and give me a course correction if I'm stating it incorrectly in any way, Professor. There were 2 searches at the time that Mangione was picked up in central Pennsylvania. One was at the McDonald's that we've seen on body cam. The other was at the nearby station house, correct? All right, that's what we're talking about here. And the search of the backpack at the McDonald's was considered improper on behalf of the judge because it was not in the immediate control of the defendant. And the items found during that search at McDonald's will be suppressed. The gun will not be suppressed because it was found at the police station. All right, so far everything's on the table, right with that?
Yes. That is correct. And, with the incident to arrest, the whole point of that exception is that a suspect could grab a weapon. So for the protection of the officers, people around them, they have to do a search of the area. In this case, the officers had already moved the bag away from the defendant. He was then cuffed shortly thereafter. And so the court is saying, you didn't have that justification anymore. The federal court does not agree with that analysis, but the federal court's applying federal case law, not New York case law.
And like people listening to this, what's the difference between the McDonald's and the police station? And I think that would be an obvious question.
The difference is the difference is the rationale. One, the incident to arrest search is there to protect people in the area, and the judge is saying there was no further danger once you cuffed him. The inventory exception is that they have a right to inventory everything in your possession once you are arrested. And so that means that this is going to come in. Now, I have to say, in defense of these officers, there's discussion that you can hear as they try to get this right. I mean, the officers are debating among themselves, how should they proceed here? These are not officers that were trying to violate the Constitution or anything else. It seems to be a good faith effort to stay within the lines. It's just that in these type of circumstances, the time and distance elements get really blurred. And even officers at the scene had a hard time trying to decide how they should act and what they should act under.
Mm-hmm. My last question for you, Professor, is, and you might not know this, but his criminal defense has got to cost a fortune. Is his family paying for this, or is this being done by groups or fundraising? How is that working?
Yeah, we don't know that. Even if this is, at least I don't know that, even if this is a public defender, it will cost a fortune, even though those people are in the employ of the state. But we don't know that. But this is going to be a very expensive case, even though, as we talked, Dana, earlier, there's not a lot of give at the elbows for the defense here. The fact that the gun came in, the fact that they have the videotape, the fact that the jury can look at it, doesn't leave a whole lot for the defense. But in a very curious way, that tends to make the defense even more expensive as you try to find some way to thread that needle.
Professor, thank you. As we sort through this, let's go back to Eric Shawn. And Eric, let's go through the itemized list one last time so that we're all on the same page here. What is in and what is out?
Yeah, we have more clarification now on what is in and what is out. What is out, what the jury will not learn about, the bullet magazine, That's the magazine that full of bullets that Officer Christy Wasser found wrapped in wet underwear, because that was found in the backpack at McDonald's. The backpack was 9 feet away at another table, placed there by a police officer. Therefore, Judge Carroll found that it was not in the control of Mangione, and that was an illegal search because there was no search warrant at that time for that backpack. The cell phone that he had, his passport, his wallet, and a computer chip that Christy Wasser, police officer Wasser, found at the McDonald's. She then takes the backpack an 11-minute or so ride to the police station. He's arrested. They start going through the backpack. She finds the gun. She finds a diary. That will be allowed in. The red diary will be allowed in, and the weapon will be allowed in. The judge, in his ruling, points out that the diary was opened, that police officers, for inventory purposes, photographed every page of the diary as they took that in. So obviously, the judge has ruled that that was a legal search at the police station, which include those items. So that's why we're basically saying, I think Jonathan Turley is right. It's kind of a half victory, half win. Something's out, but most importantly, it appears now that the diary will be allowed in, and the weapon, the 9mm gun that police say was used to kill Brian Thompson, will be allowed in, as far as we can see now.
The journal's in, the gun's in. What's not in is the magazine for the ammo, the cell phone, which could be significant, we'll see. A computer chip, which could also be significant. I imagine what kind of information's on that, as well as a passport and a wallet. Eric, thank you. That continues before the judge. And to our audience, yet again, there's a camera in that courtroom, which really, here in New York, we're not used to that.
No.
So long as that's the case, we're going to see video, and once that happens, we'll bring it to you when it becomes available here in America's Newsroom.
There's some breaking news for our return to the desk here. Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube, and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.